Porteus adjusted the weight of his bolt gun, the holy weapon humming with a faint power. Sweat trickled down his brow, mingling with the grime of war that perpetually coated his armor. Below, the teeming cityscape of Gilead Prime sprawled like a diseased beast, its once gleaming spires now blackened claws reaching towards the bruised sky. The orbital bombardment had been a brutal ballet, a prelude to the symphony of violence about to erupt. "Brother Aramek," Porteus voxed, his voice a low rumble beneath the thrumming of the drop pod. "Enemy presence confirmed. We detected several unidentified biosignatures in Sector Beta 17. Aramek's gravelly reply crackled through the vox, his voice laced with the grim acceptance that had become their shared language. "Acknowledged, Porteus. 7th Company. Prepare for immediate engagement. Remember, purge the alien filth with righteous fury, but prioritize civilian lives. The Emperor's mercy extends even to the misguided." Porteus grunted with assent. Mercy, however, was a luxury often in short supply on the battlefields of the Gilead Crusade. The Absolver Marines, renowned for their zealous devotion and unwavering faith, were the Emperor's scalpel, carving a path of righteous slaughter through the festering wound of chaos that had consumed this world. A jolt ripped through the drop pod as it slammed into the atmosphere. Before the impact, the world tilted on its axis, with a kaleidoscope of smoke and fire filling the viewport. The pod shuddered violently, alarms blaring a cacophony of warnings. Porteus braced himself, tightening his fingers around the blessed bolter. The impact was a brutal crumple of metal and bone. Groaning, Porteus forced open the hatch, the stench of burning flesh and ozone assaulting his senses. Smoke billowed from the ruptured drop pod, obscuring the view of the war zone below. A guttural screech pierced the air, followed by the unmistakable chittering of alien limbs scuttling across debris. Through the haze, a monstrous silhouette emerged. The creature was an insectoid. Its carapace was a grotesque parody of chitinous armor, and its mandibles were dripping with caustic venom. More of them swarmed from the wreckage of nearby buildings, their multifaceted eyes glinting with predatory hunger. "For the Emperor!" Porteus roared, raising his bolter. A blinding emerald pulse erupted from the weapon, the bolt tearing a gaping hole in the nearest Xenos creature. The others recoiled, momentarily, but their hunger outweighed their fear. Porteus's voice crackled with a harsh laugh. Brother Salador, his battle-scarred face perpetually twisted in a mirthless grin, voxed, "Looks like the welcoming committee arrived early, eh, Porteus? Don't worry, these Xenos won't last long enough to throw a proper feast." The battle lines were drawn. The Absolver Marines, righteous fury burning in their eyes, charged into the tide of Xenos, their bolters spitting holy fire. The maw of war had opened, and Gilead Primus was about to drown in a baptism of blood. The Xenos had met their initial surprise attack with a storm of bolter fire. Porteus, alongside Brother Salador, waded through the carnage, their tactical bolters spitting emerald death. The chitinous shells of the Xenos offered little resistance. One blast could send a creature sprawling, limbs twitching uselessly before dissolving into a caustic ichor. But the sheer number of Xenos was overwhelming. They swarmed from the ruined buildings, chittering and snapping, their razor-sharp claws glinting maliciously. Porteus slammed the butt of his bolter against the Xenos skull, crushing it like an overripe fruit. His helm was filled with the stench of burnt carapace and alien innards, a grim perfume of war. "Brother Aramek," Salador bellowed, his voice straining through the din of battle. "We need reinforcements. These vermin are rife in this sector." Static crackled in response, then Aramek's voice, heavy with worry, cut through. "Salador, hold! We've encountered a larger force, possibly a broodlord. Expect delays." Porteus cursed under his breath. A broodlord, the leader of this teeming horde, could turn the tide in an instant. Their psychic shrieks could warp the minds of even the most devout Marines. He glanced at Salador, a grim understanding passing between them. "We hold them here, brother," Porteus said, his voice steady despite the rising sense of dread. "The Emperor is willing. The others will break through soon." Salador grinned with a bloody glint in his eyes. "Emperor is indeed willing, but until then, let's give these Xenos a taste of holy fury." They fought back to back, a whirlwind of bolter fire and righteous fury. Proteus slammed his armored fist into the face of a charging Xenos, sending it reeling. He followed up with a brutal bolt to the chest, turning the creature into a fine mist of alien goo. But the tide seemed inexorable. More Xenos creatures poured out of the shattered buildings, chittering a maddening symphony. Proteus felt a flicker of fear, quickly quelled by faith. Fear was a weakness he couldn't afford. He fought with renewed vigor, each bolt a prayer, each crushed carapace a hymn of cleansing fire. Suddenly, a booming voice echoed through the battlefield. "By the Emperor's wrath!" A figure, clad in Terminator armor, descended from the smoke-filled sky. Brother Galenos, the company's champion, landed with a bone-jarring thud, his power fist crackling with unholy energy. "Brother Porteus, Brother Salador, fall back, leave the rest to me." Porteus hesitated. Retreat was a bitter pill to swallow, but Galenos was a beacon of righteous fury, a walking bastion of faith. With a final glare at the encroaching Xenos, Porteus fell back alongside Salador, their bolters covering Galenos' advance. The champion waded into the swarm with his power fist, a whirlwind of destruction. Each blow shattered Xenos carapaces, sending limbs flying. Screams of agony filled the air, a testament to the Emperor's righteous wrath. As they retreated, Porteus caught a glimpse of the battle raging above. Drop pods descended in a fiery ballet, disgorging more Absolver Marines. They charged into the fray with their bolters, adding to the war's cacophony. A sliver of hope flickered within Porteus. Perhaps, with Galenos holding the line and reinforcements arriving, they could weather this Xenos onslaught. But he knew the battle for Gilead Prime was far from over. The maw of war had opened wide, revealing a darkness deeper and more terrifying than they could have ever imagined. The stench of burnt flesh and chitin hung heavy in the air as Porteus and Salador regrouped with the remainder of their squad. Brother Galenos, his Terminator armor scorched and dripping with alien ichor, stood defiant, a wall of righteous fury against the encroaching Xenos tide. "Well fought, brothers," Galenos rumbled, his voice distorted by the vox modulator. "But the heart of this infestation remains. We must purge the broodlord." Porteus hefted his bolt gun with a grim resolve, hardening his features. "Where is it?" Galenos gestured towards a towering structure in the distance, its upper half wreathed in a sickly green glow. "The hive spires in Sector Alpha 12. It reeks of warp taint. The broodlord must be nestled inside." Salador let out a barking laugh. "Then let's pay it a visit. Imagine the look on that Xeno-abomination's face when we bring the Emperor's wrath to its doorstep." Despite the bravado, Porteus felt a knot of unease tighten in his gut. Hive spires were notoriously labyrinthine, breeding grounds for all manner of horrors, but there was no turning back. Gilead Primus's fate rested on their shoulders. They navigated the war-torn streets, dodging fallen rubble and the occasional Xenos stragglers. The closer they got to the hive spire, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The green glow pulsed with an unnatural rhythm, sending shivers down Porteus's spine. Reaching the base of the spire, they found the entrance sealed by a massive blast door, its metal warped and scorched by plasma fire. Galenos stepped forward, his power fist crackling with renewed energy. "Move back, brothers!" he bellowed. With a thunderous roar, Galenos slammed his fist into the blast door. The impact reverberated through the ground, sending tremors through the surrounding buildings. The door groaned in protest, sparks showering the ground as cracks snaked across its surface. A second blow, delivered with even more force, shattered the door into 1,000 fragments. Green light spilled out from the gaping hole, momentarily blinding Porteus. As his vision cleared, he saw a writhing mass of pulsating flesh blocking the entrance. A guttural shriek filled the air, a psychic blow hammered against Porteus's mind. Images of writhing tentacles, dripping maws, and endless hunger flooded his thoughts. He gritted his teeth, reciting a passage from the Litany of Hate, his faith serving as a shield against the Xenos assault. Salador spoke, his voice tinged with madness from the psychic assault. "It seems the broodlord welcomes us. Let's not disappoint it. With a battle cry that echoed through the ruined street, the Absolver Marines charged into the hive spire, the green glow swallowing them whole. The maw of the beast had opened once more, ready to consume them in its fetid depths. The hive spire's interior was a grotesque parody of human ingenuity. Twisted metal walkways clung precariously to pulsating organic walls, the air thick with the stench of decay and alien pheromones. The sickly green glow emanated from bioluminescent growths that pulsed in rhythm with a throbbing heartbeat that seemed to vibrate through the very structure. Porteous pushed forward, his bolter held tight, and his faith was the only anchor in this warped reality. The psychic assault had left him shaken, his mind filled with flashes of grotesque alien forms and the overwhelming urge to consume. He fought down the rising tide, chanting a prayer under his breath. Ahead, Galenos carved a path through the fleshy tendrils that writhed across the passage. His power fist glowed with an unholy light, each blow cauterizing the severed flesh. Salador, his eyes gleaming with a manic fervor, unleashed a torrent of bolter fire, the emerald blasts leaving smoldering holes in the pulsating walls. Suddenly, a deafening screech echoed through the chamber. A monstrous form emerged from the shadows, its chitinous carapace glistening with an oily sheen. It stood on 4 powerful legs, its elongated body culminating in a grotesque head with mandibles that gnashed with predatory hunger. This was the Broodlord, the heart of the Xenos infestation. The Broodlord unleashed a barrage of psychic energy, a wave of pure hatred that slammed into the Absolver Marines. Porteous stumbled back, his vision blurring. The Xenos assault twisted images of his homeworld and his family into grotesque parodies. He felt the primal urge to lash out, to tear into his brothers in a blind frenzy. A thunderous roar tore through his mental haze. Galenos stood defiant, his power fist crackling with holy energy. "For the Emperor!" he roared, charging towards the Broodlord. The sight of their champion rekindled Porteous' faith. He slammed a fresh magazine into his bolter, the familiar weight grounding him. With a renewed snarl, he joined the fray. The chamber became a whirlwind of violence. Galenos, a whirlwind of righteous fury, traded blows with the Broodlord. His power fist smashed against chitinous armor, sending showers of sparks flying. Salador, a whirlwind of emerald death, unleashed a hail of bolter fire, each shot tearing into the Broodlord's flesh. Porteous focused his fire, aiming for the weak points exposed by Galenos' assault. He saw a pulsating sac on the Broodlord's back, a sickly green glow emanating from within. It was the creature's central nervous system's most vulnerable point. With a deep breath, Porteous squeezed the trigger. The emerald bolt lanced through the air, true as a prayer. It slammed into the sack, a blinding flash erupting as the energy core overloaded. A shriek of unimaginable agony tore through the chamber. As his central nervous system overloaded, the Broodlord writhed, his limbs flailing. One final tremor shook the hive spire, then the monstrous creature slumped to the ground, a twitching mass of inert flesh. Silence descended, thick and heavy. The Absolver Marines stood panting, their armor scorched and dripping with alien ichor. They had won, but the victory tasted like ash in their mouths. The battle for Gilead Prime was far from over. The hive spire, a testament to Xena's corruption, loomed above them, a chilling reminder of the darkness they faced. As they caught their breath, a new sound reached their ears. The rhythmic chanting grew louder with each passing moment. Their brothers' voices echoed through the twisted corridors, a hymn of defiance against the encroaching darkness. Porteous straightened, and his bolter held firm. Primus might have temporarily shut down the beast's maw, but the war for Gilead had just begun. The air within the hive spire hung heavy with the aftermath of the battle. The stench of burnt flesh and ozone mingled with the sickly sweet perfume of alien ichor. With a hiss of venting steam, Porteous watched as Galenos, whose Terminator armor dented and scorched, deactivated his power fist. "Well fought, brothers," Galenos rumbled, his voice heavy with exertion. "The Emperor's will has prevailed this day." Salador, his face streaked with grime and sweat, chuckled humorously. "Prevailed for now, brother, but this hive spire is a mere microcosm of the corruption that has festered in this world." Porteous nodded grimly. The Broodlord's psychic assault still lingered, a gnawing unease in the back of his mind. He glanced around the chamber, the twisted organic walls pulsing with an unnatural light. This place reeked of heresy, of a darkness deeper than the Xenos threat they faced. Suddenly, a chilling voice echoed through the chamber, distorted and amplified by the warped architecture. It spoke in a language alien to human ears, yet Porteus felt the meaning pierce his mind like a venomous blade. It spoke of ancient gods, forgotten pacts, and a rising tide of darkness that would consume the galaxy. A figure atop a pulsating tendril in the distance was the source of the voice. The humanoid form, cloaked in tattered robes, had its face obscured by a writhing mass of tentacles. Its skeletal fingers clutched a staff that pulsed with a sickly green light, the source of the psychic assault that had plagued them. A cold dread gripped Porteus. This was no mere Xenos creature. This was a psyker, a heretic wielding the warp's power for nefarious purposes. A chill ran down his spine, a primal fear that transcended the battlefield carnage he had witnessed. "Heretics!" Galenos bellowed, his voice resonating with righteous fury. "Your blasphemous presence defiles this place. Prepare to face the Emperor's wrath." The figure on the tendril cackled, causing Porteus' spine to shiver. "Foolish mortals," it rasped, its voice dripping with malice. "You cannot hope to resist the tide of change. The power of the ancient gods rises, and your precious Emperor will crumble before it." With a flick of its staff, the heretic unleashed a wave of psychic energy. The chamber pulsed with a malevolent light, tendrils of warp energy lashing out at the Absolver Marines. Porteus raised his shield, the impact sending a jolt of pain through his arm. He saw his brothers stumble back, their faces contorting in pain as they fought against the psychic assault. "For the Emperor!" Porteus roared, his voice a beacon of defiance amidst the psychic storm. He charged forward, bolter-spitting emerald fire. The bolt struck the heretic's staff, shattering the sickly green energy bubble that surrounded it. The heretic screeched in fury, his skeletal hand lashing out with unnatural speed. A tendril of raw warp energy slammed into Porteus, sending him crashing against the pulsating wall. Pain lanced through his body, and his vision blurred at the edges. As he lay there, dazed and battered, he saw the other Absolver Marines charging towards the heretic. Galenos, a whirlwind of righteous fury, smashed his power fist into the creature's chest. Salador unleashed a hail of bolt of fire, each shot tearing into the heretic's tattered robes. But the heretic was no simple foe. It lashed out with telekinetic fury, sending Galenos flying through the air. An unseen force threw Salador back, his bolter clattering to the ground. The heretic turned its attention back to Porteus, its skeletal hand reaching out towards him. Fear threatened to consume him, but then a surge of righteous anger welled within. He wouldn't let this heretic defile this place any further. With a Herculean effort, Porteus pushed himself to his feet. He grabbed his fallen plasma pistol, the weapon humming with barely contained energy. Aiming with all his remaining strength, he fired. The superheated beam of plasma slammed into the heretic's chest, the impact detonating in a blinding flash. The creature shrieked in agony as its body disintegrated into a cloud of ash and warp energy. The tendril beneath it gave way, sending the heretic and its staff plummeting into the pulsating depths below. Silence descended once more, broken only by the ragged breaths of the Marines. Porteus slumped against the wall, his body screaming in protest. He looked at his brothers, both battered but alive. "The Emperor protects!" Galenos rasped with a weary smile on his face. The battle within the hive spire had taken its toll. The Absolver Marines, battered and bruised, surveyed the aftermath. Galenos, his Terminator armor scorched and hissing with cooling vents, knelt beside the still glowing remains of the heretic's staff. "A powerful artifact," he rumbled, his voice echoing in the cavernous chamber. "Chaos taint runs deep within this spire, but purging this staff disrupts a significant portion of it." Salador, nursing a singed arm, spat on the ground. "I see more Xenos filth to scrape off our boots," Salador said. "But where do we go from here, Brother Galenos? This spire is a twisted labyrinth, and the enemy could be lurking around any corner." Porteus, his body thrumming with the after effects of the plasma blast, forced himself to stand. The heretic's words echoed in his mind, a chilling reminder of the true enemy they faced. This wasn't just about purging Xenos, it was a war against the very fabric of reality, a war for the soul of mankind. "We press on," he declared, his voice hoarse but firm. "We secure this spire, find any survivors trapped inside, and, most importantly, locate the source of this heretical taint. It's probably the epicenter of the Xenos infestation, too." Galenos grunted in agreement. "Brother Porteus speaks truth. We cannot allow this corruption to fester. We purge the Xenos, cleanse the taint, and leave nothing but a smoldering husk in our wake." Salador, with a glint of manic zeal in his eyes, grinned. "Then let's get to purging. There's more Xenos flesh to turn into holy incense, and I haven't had my fill of heretic screams today." Despite the grim situation, a flicker of hope ignited within Porteus. They were battered and weary, but their faith remained unbroken. They were the Emperor's chosen warriors, and they would not falter in their duty. As they ventured deeper into the twisted corridors of the hive spire, a faint sound reached their ears. It was a weak, rhythmic tapping, a desperate plea for help amidst the oppressive silence. The sound led them down a narrow passage, the stench of decay intensifying with every step. Finally, they reached a sealed metal door, its surface dented and warped. The tapping originated from behind it. Porteus raised his bolter, a flicker of unease gnawing at him. He didn't know what horrors awaited them on the other side, but one thing was certain. They wouldn't turn a blind eye to the pleas of innocence caught in the crossfire of this unholy war. With a heavy clang, Porteus breached the door. The sight that greeted them was a stark contrast to the grotesque environment they had traversed. A small makeshift shelter huddled in a forgotten corner of the hive spire. Inside, a group of civilians cowered, their faces etched with fear and exhaustion. An old woman, her eyes filled with a mixture of terror and relief, stepped forward. "Thank the Emperor," she croaked, her voice trembling. "We thought we were all alone." Porteus lowered his bolter, a sense of weary pride washing over him. They were more than just warriors, they were beacons of hope in a world consumed by darkness. In the flickering light of a makeshift lantern, Porteus saw humanity's faces staring back at him. A young child, clutching a ragged teddy bear, peeked out from behind his mother's legs. A grizzled man, his face etched with the hardships of hive life, held a makeshift weapon in a trembling hand. These were the people they were fighting for. They swore to protect these innocent souls. As Porteus met their gazes, a renewed sense of purpose ignited within him. The war for Gilead Primus had just begun, but they would not falter. They would purge the Xenos, cleanse the taint, and ensure that humanity's flickering flame would continue to burn bright, even in the darkest corners of this war-torn world. The encounter with the civilians had been a stark reminder of the human cost of war. As they escorted the shivering group through the labyrinthine corridors of the hive spire, Porteus couldn't help but feel a surge of protectiveness. These were the innocents they were fighting for, their vulnerability a stark contrast to the hardened exteriors of the Absolver Marines. Galenos, ever the pragmatist, barked orders. He assigned 2 Marines to ensure the civilians' safety while the rest continued their mission to purge the Xenos and locate the source of the heretical taint. Brother Silas, a young and zealous Marine whose eyes burned with righteous fury, matched Porteus. The unmistakable sounds of battle shattered the oppressive silence as they ventured deeper. Bolter fire echoed through the metallic corridors, punctuated by the screeches of unseen Xenos creatures. Porteus felt a familiar thrill rush through him, the warrior's instinct sharpening his senses. They rounded a corner and found themselves face to face with a squad of imperial guardsmen, their laser guns spitting hotshot fire into a swarm of chittering Xenos. The guardsmen, clad in their threadbare fatigues, looked weary and outnumbered. A grizzled sergeant bellowed, his voice hoarse, "By the Emperor! Reinforcements at last! Help us push these Xenos back!" There was no need to repeat the information to Porteus. With a battle cry that echoed through the chamber, he and Silas charged into the fray. Bolter fire tore through the Xenos ranks, with emerald blasts leaving smouldering craters in their chitinous carapaces. The guardsmen, bolstered by the arrival of the Astartes, fought with renewed vigor. Their laser guns blazed, their bayonets flashing as they engaged the Xenos in brutal close-quarter combat. The chamber became a whirlwind of violence, the air thick with the stench of burnt flesh and ozone. Porteus fought with feral intensity, his bolter a deadly extension of his will. Each shot was a prayer for the Emperor. Each fallen Xenos was a testament to his unwavering faith. He saw Silas fighting with a similar zeal, his young face contorted in a mask of righteous fury. Slowly but surely, the tide began to turn. The combined firepower of the Astartes and the guardsmen pushed the Xenos back. The alien creatures' dying shrieks echoed in the chamber, their bodies heaped high on the metallic floor. Finally, the last Xenos creature fell with a twitching groan. Silence descended, broken only by the ragged breaths of the soldiers. Porteus lowered his bolter, his armor slick with sweat and Xenos ichor. He looked around the chamber, taking stock of the damage. Several guardsmen lay dead, their faces pale and lifeless. This served as a grim reminder of the brutal cost of victory. The grizzled sergeant approached Porteus, his face etched with a mixture of gratitude and weariness. "Thank you, Astartes," he rasped, offering a shaky salute. "You saved our hides there." Porteus nodded curtly. "We serve the Emperor," he replied, his voice gruff but sincere. "Where were you headed before the Xenos attack?" "We were on our way to secure a communication relay station," the sergeant explained. "It's vital for establishing contact with the rest of the Crusade forces." "That's our next destination," Porteus declared. "Lead the way, soldier." And so, the unlikely alliance of Astartes and guardsmen continued their trek through the hive spire. Despite winning the battle, Gilead Primus's war remained far from over. With every step, they ventured deeper into the twisted labyrinth, following a thread of hope that led them towards a beacon of communication and a chance to turn the tide in this war-torn world.